Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Claire Quansah. Claire is an agency pro who is passionate about helping creative leaders get their business humming. She specializes in helping agencies achieve quality, consistency, and efficiency through better people management, stronger supplier relationships, and optimized processes. So I had to get her on the show so that we could go deeper into those areas. In this episode, we dive into strategies for improving processes without disrupting team flow, practical steps leaders can take to drive consistency and growth, how to build stronger relationships across teams and suppliers, and more. No one was asking for another community, but I've made one anyways. So what's different? The dynamic agency community is designed around access rather than content. Access to peers who've done it before. Access to experts who've designed solutions. Access to resources that have been battle tested. And right now, the price for founding members is only $97 a year. Join today so your agency has immediate access to everything you need to grow. You can join at dynamicagency.community. And now, Claire Quansah. It's easier than ever to start an agency, but it's only getting harder to stand out and keep it alive. Join me as we explore the strategies agencies are using today to secure a better tomorrow. This is Agency Forward. What's the first step that agencies should take to get their shit together?
I think the first step is probably actually not taking a step. I think it's good to kind of stop and pause, just so then so you can kind of reflect and look at where things are at the moment. It's so easy to rush into trying to take action and change things and resolve things, but actually you need to stop first, reflect, and then look at, okay, then what are the biggest problems, the biggest things that are slowing you down? And then you start to kind of delve into those to start to understand why. I think people often rush to kind of invest in a new thing or a new person or, all of that stuff. But taking that time to really do some digging first is so much more important and so much more valuable, I would say. So that would be my first step.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people you hear that, the businesses that are winning are the ones that take action the fastest. And so they try to move very quick, but it's like, now you're moving in the wrong direction. So why don't we actually step back? I guess, what are some of those things you're seeing as they step back, either struggles that they're having with taking that pause to look at the bigger picture and identify those things, but yeah, let's start there.
I think often it's there'll be things around lack of consistency is quite a big thing. So ensuring that you've got processes or things in place that can help you to be consistent across the board, which is often the difference actually between, I think, big agencies tend to have that kind of nailed down in terms of whether that's how they onboard clients, how they work with clients, the systems and processes that they're using, whereas whilst it's a good thing about smaller agencies, that they can be that little bit more agile and lighter foot, sometimes it's the consistency or lack of consistency that can hold them back. So that's definitely something that seems to be a challenge for them. And then that kind of also then leads into the way people are working as well. So you can have people that are doing lots of things and busy doing a lot of stuff, but actually nobody's really got that clarity in terms of ownership and accountability for things, and not really knowing, okay, then how can we improve something because we've got 10 people doing something a different way. How can we make sure that we've got a consistent way of doing it? And then we can kind of cut through all of that to make sure this is our agency's way of doing X or Y, and this is the person who's going to take ownership of it.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things I see the most with agencies moving from 20-ish team members and getting bigger. It's smaller than that. It's maybe you don't necessarily need a super defined process for every little thing. It helps, but your team's going to figure out how to get it done. And usually, since there's so few of them, it's they just know it, right? They understand the process.
Yeah, they know it. Yeah. And you can probably get away with kind of having everybody just chipping in. That's some of the fun of it. Everybody's kind of doing a bit of everything. But then as you grow, you do get to the point where actually you do need that clarity, and that consistency piece becomes really, really important. If not, things can start to become a bit chaotic, really, and that's what starts to cause more problems. Or you then end up with, I see founders or agency leaders that then just become kind of frustrated themselves that maybe things aren't quite the way they want them to be done, or to the standard that they want them to be done, or how they want it to be done. But that's often because then there hasn't been, through that process of growth and that phase of growth, there hasn't been an opportunity to actually capture it properly. So again, you've got all these people doing things differently, but nobody's really said, okay, then let's stop and look at how we're doing it and how we're actually now going to improve and move forward and find a clear way of moving forward.
That's where I hear the statement, like, or the question, I guess, why does this feel like it's getting harder? And like, it shouldn't be getting easier at this point? And like agency found, it's like, that's, I think, the reason, right? Where it's like, they don't necessarily have all the processes at this point. They've seen some results, they're starting to grow, but it's just chaos because they don't have one way of doing things. And so the team just goes in different directions. Is how do you help agencies kind of align on those things to make sure they are doing the right things?
So I think it's a combination of, and you're right, it's very much, it's the founders that will feel that frustration, but sometimes actually the teams will feel that frustration too. It's not always just that person at the top, it's the teams will start to feel frustrated or feel like things are slow or, again, inconsistent. So again, if you're taking that time to kind of really do that, you call it discovery. So really kind of spending time looking at, okay, then how are we doing? Onboarding seems to be coming to mind, but, working with clients, what does that look like? How does that team do it? Or how does that team leader tend to do it? And start to look at all of the steps that are being taken and having a conversation. Say, well, is this working? How long is this taking us? Are we getting the most from that particular process? And if you're doing that across the team and with the agency leader as well, then you can start to build a picture of what is happening and what's working. But then also maybe if there are any gaps as well, there could be things that people are doing that where they're missing out on bits of information or missing out on steps that are causing problems later on. So it is a lot of discovery and digging deep, whether that's, going through systems and files and things, but also having conversations. I think sometimes having a talk with somebody can really help you to understand what is happening and the way things work. So doing that, to then be able to sit down and you almost feel that you've got lots of pieces of paper almost. I'm old school. So, and you want to look at everything all together, don't you? And say, okay, then here's a picture of how things work at the moment. Let's try to bring on what are the best bits that we've got, the things that are most important. And you build that into create the process. And I think often process can sound quite restrictive, and it can make people think, here's a clear set of steps that you have to go through. Every time you're doing this job, you have to go from steps A, B, C, and so on. But I think it's more around having maybe a guide or best practice or milestones that people can follow. So to be able to actually, for us to be able to achieve this challenge, these are the key things that we need to make sure that we have in place. So it's not stopping people from being creative or stopping people from adding their own kind of personal way of doing it, but it provides that clarity to be able to say, okay, then this is what we need to happen. Here's where you go for that information, or here's the steps that you need to take to be able to make that happen. But you probably can still have a bit of that freedom to do it. And it frees you up to be able to think about more fun things, I think, as well. A lot of process, once you have a process in place, you can just get on with it and do it, know you've achieved those things, so you can think about the more fun or creative things that you want to be doing.
Right. I think I'd heard someone, they kind of reframed how they were looking at processes when they were smaller. So rather than saying like, this is going to be like every step that we need to follow, it's more, let's set the standard for what done looks like with this. And then, and that's the process. It's just like, we need this outcome. So do whatever you need to. And we might have, if we use this tool, we tell the client these things at this point, but like everything else, tons of wiggle room. So I guess, are you seeing similar?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. Like I say, I think sometimes when we hear process, it can feel restrictive. But if it's more around setting standards and expectations and almost saying, this is what we need, this is what we need to adhere to almost, then that's fine. Then you can do the other stuff. There's no problem with that. But if everybody is clear in terms of what the expectation is, we talk about working with clients that actually we need to make sure we have certain things in place for every single client. And everybody's aware of that. Everybody's clear in terms of what that minimum standard is, whether that's to do with how quickly simple things, how quickly you respond to clients. Do we agree how quickly we're going to respond to them? Or do we agree, our process for, arranging meetings and things? What is the standard that we want to set, the minimum that we know everybody in our team is going to stick to? And then that's fine. That's not necessarily a process, but it's more an agreement and something that we say, yes, we can all stick to that.
Right. Yeah, I like that. The reframing as an agreement. It definitely, I think that captures it better. What do you do for, it's like knowledge management within an agency? So I was guilty with our agency of just having files everywhere. So like if you said, hey, how do you do these things? We would have to look in ClickUp, Google Docs, whatever other tool. Like we tried other tool. We have like MindMeister, right? Like Mind Maps, Slack was a crazy one. Like, but we have them everywhere. And I'm now guilty of doing this within my business. Some of my clients, I'm seeing that I need to kind of rein them in to just pick one place where we're going to document all of this so that anyone on the team can find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Like creating processes, period, is going to be hard for the team if they can't find all those things. How do you even get people on track for that?
So I think that's a really good point around having one place for everything. So agreeing a central location that you can just kind of direct people to, because we can all be guilty of having so many different, like you say, we'll have Slack or ClickUp or Trello or whatever it is, so many things doing so many different things. But if you can agree on one place to be able to hold that stuff, then that makes it easy for people. But then it's always good to just kind of reinforce to people that that's where to go, that's the place to refer to. And constantly having those conversations as well. I think it's very easy. You create a nice, pretty flow chart with the steps to be able to do something. You tell everybody, hey, we've done the flow chart, and we say, right, that's it, done, forgotten about. And you hope that everybody's remembered it when they go off to do their design work or their PR or whatever it is they're doing. And actually, because they're occupied with their work, they might not follow it. So I think reinforcement as well is just as important. So once you've set up the process and you've got the place for it to be referred to, getting into good habits of reminding people that that's where it is, reminding people how to use things, but also then having conversations around, is it working? So don't be afraid to say, periodically, is this working? What do we need to change? What do we need to tweak? Because then I think that once you're asking for people's input as well, they're more likely to feel like, okay, then this does mean something, I can get something out of it, and they're more likely to buy into it. So it is a process in itself, but being able to kind of, I think connection and communication is really important, helping people to understand why we want to have processes in place, what's in it for them. Most people, human beings, we're quite selfish. We want to know what's in it for us. So if there's any kind of change or anything new that might be difficult for people to grasp, so let's say if you're moving to a new piece of software or something, and people have been used to something for a long time, well, being able to say to them, well, these are the benefits, actually, it means you're going to be able to save time. It means that we're going to be able to do things so much faster. It means we're going to get access to more data. It's going to make your job easier, rather than, be the ops person just saying, oh, it's going to give me lots of information that I want. Well, for you, it's going to make your job easier. It means you're going to be able to do these things much more quickly. Telling people what's in it for them, how it's going to benefit them, can help as well, because they're more likely to be bought into it. And again, doing that consistently, helping them to understand when you do start to see the benefits, celebrating that with them as well. So telling them, hey, we've done this change, but now we're starting to see the benefits of it. So really communicating all of that stuff consistently and regularly. I use the word consistency a lot.
Yeah, that's the best word to use, consistently. So, do you assign out, like when you get into like the cadence of looking at like a process and stuff to check in, to make sure it's working, to see if there's anything that we should be adding, is that all at like the owner's responsibility to kind of come back, or the head of operations, right? Someone who like is very specifically looking at that side of things? Or do you recommend like kind of assigning it out to individuals on the team where their hands are going to be on that process a lot, so maybe they're seeing it more, and just adding that extra touch point of like, hey, go check in every quarter or so? Like, but I guess happy to hear your recommendation on that too, for how frequently you should check these. But like, should you be going in and have that individual now looking at it because they're doing it every day? They should be able to see things, or is it better to get that outside perspective? Like, how are you looking at that?
I think you probably actually, this probably sounds like a cop-out, but you probably need both. So it's good to get the insight from the person who is heads down using that process regularly. But then if you have got somebody that's got that kind of that macro view in terms of how that works for the wider agency,
Right.
then you can then find that balance, because actually one change that might work for an individual team might not necessarily work for the wider agency, and
Right.
likewise,
Breaks everything else.
the person at the top might make a recommendation, but actually, if it's going to make life difficult for everybody else, then you don't want to kind of then start to break that and again get people's frustrations to increase. So doing that regular review, but doing it together, so actually people be able to spot problems, spot challenges together, and working out what might work. Testing is a great thing as well. So being able to try new things, there's nothing wrong with kind of trying something and then saying, actually, you know what, it doesn't do what we want it to do, or saying, actually, it will do if we tweak it a little bit. So don't be afraid to test and challenge. But in terms of how regularly to do those things, depending on what it is you're looking at, you probably at least annually, but then maybe twice a year or something is probably good, so you can get into the flow of things. When something's new, you want to be doing that more often. You need to be kind of really, really looking at it. But once something's bedded in, then at least a couple of times a year is probably when you want to just kind of at least sit down and check in with your both sets of people to be able to say, is this working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like as we're talking through this, I'm having the idea of even almost setting like a reps counter on it, where it's like you need enough data to be able to look at it and say like, well, is this working? Right.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to run a test on a web page, like you need a certain number to be able to know. And so it's almost the same with that process to be able to like, well, once we hit 200 repetitions of this action, then let's go back and look, because we have enough data to know what we should be doing with it. It's kind of an interesting perspective on. I want to get into almost like change management, I guess, for like since we're on this flow of processes. I have found that most agency owners are very comfortable with change, and they will happily change things on a dime to try something new and just see what's working. But their team is like, wait, hold up, because they just got used to that process, or maybe they just finished the process and they haven't even had a chance to actually execute on it now. How do you recommend agency owners actually go back and where some of those changes may actually be critical, right? They have some information the team doesn't, and it needs to be a change, but it doesn't make it any easier for the team. So how should they go about kind of rolling these things out in a way that actually creates, unity of direction, I guess, across their entire org?
So I definitely say that piece around communication is still, just as important. So bringing people in as early as possible to help them to understand that this thing is coming, and explaining to them, helping them to know the why. Again, if possible, what it means for them. Doing that as early as possible, and also seeing if you can find. Some people might call them ambassadors or whatever it is. If there are individuals within maybe your teams that can then almost kind of help to be that representative, I guess, for your team,
right,
that can be that bridge between, the people, the leader who's coming up with these ideas and suggestions and things, and the actual team themselves, to be that bridge that can kind of maybe distill some of that information. I think that can help too. Communication is really, really part of it. But then also, not to handhold people, but education. So making sure people understand how they can use whatever it is that's being changed or being updated. Doing that training is really important as well. So it's not something that's just then kind of brought down and said, here you go, we're changing this today, everybody get on with it. But making sure that people do have that training and education. Again, they're brought in to be able to give their feedback and their thoughts too.
Yeah. So there's a term, I think it's a claque, like CLAQUE. Comedians used to, they might still do it, I don't know, but it's somewhat like a plant that they've put in the crowd to just laugh at their jokes. And the goal is like laughing is contagious, so it gets everyone else laughing as well. And as you were talking, I was just thinking like that's almost what you want inside your agency as well, right? Who are those people who can like get people all seeing the light by just by agreeing, by them understanding what your goal is so they can move the
Yeah.
entire party that way.
Yeah, totally. You need that person who's going to be positive, be that ambassador, be the one that's going to encourage people. You find the person that other people listen to. It's almost like, an influencer, an internal influencer, the person that people do listen to and take
Right.
and take on board that person's feedback and ideas, so they can almost do some of that talking for you. Rather than it just coming from a single person, a single leader, whoever it is, you have got that person who's constantly bringing out those messages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, internal marketing is definitely an underappreciated thing. But even like setting up a Slack channel to share your wins, right? Like when a client has a good win and everybody can see it and you can celebrate it, like super valuable. But then there's when you have like something you want to get people moving towards and you can market it in a way that shows, like, ties back to those results that you've gotten for clients. It's like the same way you would give proof on a landing page, right? Of what we're trying to do here. It's like you can be doing that internally. And I think that's
celebrate the wins. I think often, it's easy to just kind of, right, we've done it now. And it might be that certain teams benefit from that information. But if you can start to let people know, okay, we wanted to achieve X from making this change, and look, we're starting to see some of those results coming through. Celebrating individuals as well. If there are people who seem to be embracing that change more, then there's nothing wrong with giving them a shout out as well and celebrating them too. But as you do start to see the fruits of that labor and you start to see that return, make sure people know, so people can see that it's worth it. And it is going to be, change is often uncomfortable and a challenge for people. Yeah. Most people don't like change at all. So if you are kind of helping them through it and helping them to see the benefits of it, as you do start to realize those benefits, let people know, let them see it. And if there are benefits that are specific to certain teams and individuals, you make sure that they are aware of them too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. So I've seen that within agencies, right? Just the hesitancy to lean into change. But it's funny because I see it with my kids probably more. And it's like, guys, like, no, we can't keep doing the same, like all this the exact same way, because we're not going to get different results, right? Like, figuring out that internal marketing.
Because there are some things you think, fine, let's keep it that way. But actually, if you want to get something different, you often have to do something differently as well. And it can just be a small change. It can be a step by step thing, small changes at once, small changes at a time. But sometimes you do need a big overhaul. I mean, one example might be, as agencies some agencies want to adopt using timesheets, for example, and tracking their time. Some people are very, very against it. There are differences of opinion in terms of whether they should be used or not. But if you do take that decision, it's one thing having the software in that's going to help you to track your time, but then people then need to be tracking their time properly and knowing how to use it. So you've then got that challenge of helping people to understand why we're going to start monitoring our time now. I've been doing okay. But if you help people to realize, actually, it'll help us to see if our work is profitable, help us to see, which tasks and jobs take up more time. It'll help us to see if we're really over-servicing on certain clients and certain projects. And that in itself could potentially help us to understand, okay, then how we're costing and quoting for work, which could potentially means that we can cost and quote higher, which brings in more revenue, which then helps us which can benefit the team with, things like salaries and perks and benefits and things, or new team members can be brought on. So helping them to understand, okay, this change might be uncomfortable, but there are some benefits at the end hopefully for all of us.
Yeah. I like looking at when assessing a team, I guess, the skill will matrix. And so it's like, we either need to be motivating people or training them. I think a lot of what we've talked about so far has been around the motivation side, which is the harder thing for people, right? Because it's very individualized and like getting them. How do you approach the training side for agencies, especially when most agencies don't have a ton of downtime because they're just, right, they don't have a ton of leads, so they're trying to just maximize every inch they can to be able to bring in more revenue. How do you get them still to make sure they are doing the training pieces that are going to actually make that agency better?
So I think it's very much, again, in terms of how you position training within the agency. Again, it feels like we keep going back to kind of the internal marketing of stuff, but rather than something just being seen as a tick box exercise, great, I've done that piece of training now, helping people to understand it's an investment in them. And there's a reason why you've chosen this specific training module or training course, because we know that it will benefit you and it will benefit us in this way. So these are the skills that you're going to get from it. This is the way you're going to develop. And once you've done it, in an ideal world, you can start to put your learnings into place. This is what it could lead to. So if there's a specific, something that's quite skill specific, it could lead to, development in terms of somebody's role or expanding their responsibilities and stuff. Some of it could be softer skills in terms of how, in terms of communication skills or people management skills and things. But again, that's something that can help, because you can say, well, this might help in terms of the way that you're dealing with clients. That can help with our client retention. So rather than just, and I've seen it happen before, people just have a calendar invite put in their calendar. You've got training on this that day. Make sure you join 2 hours, and everybody turns up not knowing what it is that they're doing it for. Help people to understand why we're doing it and what they're going to get out of it. Try to arrange it for, obviously everybody's busy and they have work to do, obviously, but look at timing of it as well. So making sure it's not a time that's going to be your peak time when you're really, really busy and everybody's mind's elsewhere. So try to find times that are convenient, for want of a better word, for people, so they can really, really lean into it. I'd also say having some kind of follow-up from training. So rather than when the 2 hours or the half a day is done, and everybody's turned off their laptop and gone back to work, or they've left the meeting room, think about actions that people can then take from the training. I often will say to people, what action do you want to take from this session? If there was one thing or two things that you want to be able to do from this session, what would they be? So that actually, if people write them down, they know they've got them there. And in 2 weeks or 2 months' time, you can then go back and say, okay, then have you done this? What has that meant? Why have you not done it? What have you struggled with? So if you make it really, it needs to be something that people can be practical with and people can use, because if not, it gets forgotten and you get to the end of the year and you think, oh, but you did that training. What happened to it? And they just don't know. So really look at what happens afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's something most, excuse me, that most like workshops are guilty of. It's like the follow up to make sure we're actually doing things. Yeah, it's crazy. So I've got two more questions as we wind down here. With the first one, actually 3, because I'm now curious. I'm tacking this one on. So if we're talking like people management and just things that we need to be doing as agency leaders in order to make sure our teams are doing the right things, what's the 80-20 as far as where our focus should go? What is that big domino skill that would help us with moving everybody in the right direction?
So would I call it a skill? I'm not sure. I think we often talk about emotional intelligence and empathy being really important as leaders. When I do like training on kind of people management and line management, I think one thing that people need to remember is, I call it focusing on the person versus the performance. So understanding who the person is, who that individual is, because they will have, yes, everybody's got, their own lives and personalities and whatnot. So they'll have different personality traits. They're going to communicate in different ways. They're going to have different strengths and different weaknesses. People have different motivations and ambitions as well. We often think that by managing somebody, that person wants to be the next CEO or managing director. Not everybody does, but they might just be really, really keen to just expand their skill set, for example, really practical, tangible things. So delving into and being able to understand who that person is, and what motivates them, what encourages them, what they're scared of, what they're excited to do, I think is really, really important, because once you can tap into that, they're much more likely to develop and be brought into that kind of that relationship, and it makes it easy for you to be able to kind of find ways for them to grow and to develop in your organization. So knowing who they are, what additional skills they have that might not be related to their job right now, but they may well have other skills. They may well have, even aside from that, understanding maybe challenges they might have experienced previously. I do quite a bit of work in diversity and inclusion, and understanding that maybe somebody's had a more difficult path to get to the job that they're in now. So certain types of objectives and goals that you give them might be a challenge because they might have past challenges that they've experienced. So being able to kind of tap into that and understand who they are could open plenty of doors for you. So it's not quite a skill, but I think that's a really, really important thing that leaders need to do.
I love that answer. That was definitely great. Counts. So the last two, what is a book that you would recommend every agency owner read?
Probably, and this is probably a really obvious one. I'm trying to think of something different, but actually probably Win Without Pitching. Blair.
I don't know that anyone said it. So
okay, that's good.
There you go.
And I think because we often think of pitching being the pitch, but actually kind of it's very much around, I guess, building relationships and having conversations with people. And when you're in that situation in terms of building relationships with clients and prospects, finding ways to get to their root of their problem and being able to almost explain how you can solve the problem without going through a pitch process. So that final meeting is more of a consolidation of a conversation rather than a big presentation to say, here, we're going to impress you. So that's something that was recommended to me a few years ago, actually. And I listened to the audiobook of it. And I think it's probably, as a business book, I'd say definitely worth recommending.
Awesome. Yeah, I just added it to my list. So, and the last question, where can people learn more about you?
So people can learn more about me on quansahconsulting.com. That's my main website with information on my services and whatnot. But also find me on LinkedIn, Claire Quansah. I think I'm the only Claire Quansah on LinkedIn. I think I'm unique. So follow me on there, connect with me. I'm often sharing my thoughts and musings on various things from operations to people management and whatnot. So connect with me on there.
Awesome. Claire, thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
That's the show, everyone. You can leave a rating and review, or you can do something that benefits you. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe to Agency Forward on Substack. You'll get weekly content, resources, and links from around the internet to help you drive your agency forward.